Here's another episode of Meet the Athlete where we're sitting down with Allison FELIX, the most decorated track and field athlete in history. With over 20 worlds, 11 Olympic Games, 7 gold medals, she's etched herself in history forever. She's fast, she's an entrepreneur, she is a mother. Between her and her brother and what they're doing and what they're building is absolutely incredible, and that's what Meet the Athlete is all about. It's about uncovering what you don't know.
We released episode 1 and the response has been incredible. Our DMs are full, although we also want you to use the application process. We know that Meet the Athlete goes beyond just pairing an athlete with an early stage startup. This is an ecosystem. This is something that started in the gym, started with mindset in the way that people train and where people go and what they do with that energy if they're not putting it directly into sport at this time. And so we're really excited about exploring that with Allison today and with several other athletes after this.
You couldn't have a more excited person sitting here for Meet the Athlete with Allison FELIX.
Episode 2.
Episode 2.
This is a little wild for me because at the height of your career, I would look at the television and other people would too and see my face. And so I don't think we look as much alike now as we did when we were younger. Motherhood does that, right? Like it changes your face a bit. But it's an honor to be here with both of you, frankly, Allison and Wes FELIX. We are so excited to be joined by you today. Allison is the most decorated track and field athlete in Olympic history. She has over 20 world championship medals and 11 medals from the Olympic Games. And in spite of all of that, she is also a mother of 2, recently 2, right? That's Congratulations. That means you're also a tired mother, and we are so
Always
grateful that you joined us today at any point in time in the day.
And this is like your first thing as a mother of 2.
Yeah, that's why I was like hearing that. I'm like, oh, wow, I have 2 kids.
First mother of 2.
Best thing ever happened.
And also founder alongside Wes of an incredible footwear brand called Seish. I'm wearing Seish FELIX runners, right? This is the FELIX runner.
Yeah.
This is also a great opportunity for both of us, as Boss is going to spend a ton of time talking to you about athleticism, performance, pre, during, and post career. And I spent a good chunk of my career in footwear. And so just putting this shoe on and being like, oh, the cushioning, oh, the hug, the compression, the upper. I was floored. This is a really well-designed shoe. I love the story of building on a last for women's feet and being really thoughtful about fit. We are so grateful to have you both here today. We can't wait to get into this discussion.
Thanks for having us.
I'm excited that you guys are here. So the concept is Meet the Athlete, right? And Meet the Athlete, for me, is no matter the game, you got to prepare, right? And I think this brings something full circle for me because a lot of times people only see you as the talent. They only see you as the individual that is the scholar that wins gold medals and things like that, but they don't understand the person. They don't understand the feeling. They see you just as a token. And so wanting to bring the light to some of the things that you've accomplished outside of the sport that you're most proud of, and how's that, crossed over to, the business, the investing world, being a mom. I'm excited. I think most of all, I'm really excited to learn about you and your brother and kind of some of the things that, I had a chance to sit with him and how dope he is and how he stepped in. But I want to hear it here. I think the world needs to know. I think the world needs to start to understand that athletes are the pinnacle of kind of influence and being influential. But how do we shift that? And I think things are shifting and the power's coming to the individual. And so we need to raise our voices in the room. And I've done a few things in my life because I just keep trying. And I think, that's all we're all trying to do. But I think now the power is this. The power is coming together and using the voice to continue to inspire other people. And so, I'm sitting here very humbled because as an athlete and obviously the fastest man on the internet, I don't know if you know that. I smoke people all the time.
Yes.
So, I know you're the most decorated gold medalist and, all these awards, but I'm the most decorated Instagram smoke session giver in the world. But I would love a little bit more as you guys dive into kind of what you guys have accomplished, right? Like how is that mindset first of all, like, tell us about this journey that got you to kind of where you are today, like some of them hardships, some of the things that most people don't know you had to get over to become Allison Felix. Like, what are those things that, and again, I'm going to dive a little deeper, but surface level, as you start to open up, could you share, most people think that you got to always start from the bottom. Now we hear, did you come from a hard background? Did you come from a, 2-parent household? Like, share a little bit of that insight.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times I feel like we always feel like it's the starting from the bottom. Now we hear story, but I don't think that always is the case.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we had a great family.
Yeah.
Great kind of upbringing and parents. And I think the biggest thing for me is that it wasn't my dream to be an Olympian. Like, you always hear those stories. Like, I knew at like 5 years old, like I was sent to a training camp and this whole thing, and that just wasn't it for me. I thought I was going to be a teacher. Like, I was very normal childhood. Like, I loved basketball. Like, that's the thing I wanted to do. And all my like sporting heroes were basketball players, male basketball players. And so I kind of just like stumbled into track, and it was this thing where really I was trying to keep up with Wes. He was, whatever he was doing, like I wasn't too far behind. He's 2 years older than me. And so when he was playing basketball, I was playing basketball. He started running. I think it was really a natural competitiveness. Like, and that is something that I just remember being born with, like our family is just like super competitive, like no matter what it is. I think like growing up, like Wes never, or my dad, they never let me win in anything. So I feel like that really helped me, just kind of not be scared to lose and just like not be scared of who I was going up against. And so there was this like burning desire to like be the best. And it was something that was just, it felt natural, it was just, I'm in the sport, like, okay, what do I have to do? And just never really feeling satisfied. Like, I would do well, but it never felt like, reaching the top, and you just kept going. And I think my parents, because this wasn't the plan and we weren't like this sports family or anything, they were learning, as they went along. And so they did a really great job of just kind of stepping back. They were definitely not like those overbearing sports parents. They showed up, they supported like every meet, big or small, they were there, but they definitely weren't driving it, And to me, it was just this desire of like, okay, well, maybe I can get a scholarship to college. And then, wow, this is like, can be a career. I had no idea about that. And just learning about the Olympics, like everything for me kind of unfolded later in life.
It was a discovery.
Yeah.
And I think that's a beautiful thing, versus like chasing something that someone put in front of you.
Yeah.
It was discovery of, and it made you compete to uplift, and like what it sounds like to me. And I have this real big emphasis on, like your kids, you want to give them a better life, and you've worked so hard, but then it's like what instilling in them the right principles, though they may not have the same struggle. And a lot of times the fear sets in of like, am I doing more bad than good for them? But then I think that's a generational thing that pulls us back to like, oh, we got to struggle. We got to do this. And I think to shed the light on kind of what your parents did for you guys, and they discovered, right? They were in it. And this, I know there's a lot of people that are talking about the past trauma, but I think everything is trying. I think more women and boys need to understand that we compete to uplift, not to compete to destroy. And to me, you were like this burning desire just to continue to get good. And I think we don't have to have all the answers. And that's what you said. You said, I didn't have all the answers. Like, this thing called the scholarship. Oh shit. All right, cool. Oh man, I can go to the Olympics. Oh, cool. All right. I can go, make money doing all these things. Oh, I could be sponsored by ... And I think it's just incredible to sit and see that you have done what you've done. And then, to be able to discover the opportunity to bring your brother in your business later on. But kind of as you started to unfold, right? This new chapter of like success, which someone say, like everybody knows who you are. You're on TV. You're getting these sponsorship deals. What was the deal that you wanted the most? Like when you sought out and said, okay, who was the person in front of you that you saw? And then what was the thing that you wanted as the discovery opened? Because then the goals start to set in. You're like, I want that. I want that. Or was it still the you kept the discovery mindset the whole process?
I think it was, for me, like once I started to go to the Olympics and, I had my first experience, it was like winning a gold medal. That was the thing. And it kind of took a long process to get there.
Sure.
And so that was like the driving force. And I thought like, okay, if I get this gold medal, like everything is going to change. Like that was just like head down every day. That was like the thought process. And I think then, I made it. It was my third Olympics when everything finally came together. And there was this moment where I got the gold medal. I got 3 of them. Everything went like how I would have hoped. But it didn't feel like what I thought it was going to be. It's like I had built it up to be so much. Then when it finally came, it was like, okay, wow, that wasn't like what I had imagined. And I think it took a long time to kind of like take that all apart. But I was so focused on like this one singular goal, and I missed that like the magic was along the way, like the process and the building and the stretching and growing, like that was it. And so when I got to this thing and I thought it was going to like change my life, and this is track and field. So I come back home. It did not change my life. My life was very much so the same. And just realizing that like, no, it wasn't just about that. And I think like for so many people, we do that. Like we make it all about this one, monumental thing. And you think that that's what it's about. And then, you might get it, you might not, but that's not where it lies. And so for me, I think that was like the focus of everything for so long.
Yeah,
and then that was a turning point, I think, when I realized like it's about more than that.
More than just the accomplishment.
Yeah.
And you were asking earlier, you were saying like, so you fell in love with it. Like, what is that you fell in love with? And I think like what I saw is what you fell in love with is the process. Like you fell in love with the work. And I can see that in your life now, because like when you don't have the space to do the work, like it's the time, now that you're a mother of 2, like you want those 3 hours a day to go put the work in. Like that's what you love is that. And then I think that because of your God-given ability, then your commitment to the work, and then like all of the rest of it, like our dad didn't push us, but he did demand excellence.
And everything.
Like, so he didn't care what it was, but you will be excellent at this thing.
I love that. I love, that's what I was looking for. That someone demanded excellence from you guys. And so when you accomplished that gold medal, what was that? Obviously, you say the feeling was like, oh, it wasn't what it was, but what was that desire to continue, right? Because you could have sat back, and took some deals and been the face of a lot of different products. What was the thing that kept that motor going? That said, no, I want more. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times people accomplish things and slow down. It seemed like you added more fuel to your fire for more. And you kind of touched on that. But at that moment, what was that next chapter of the process that you were in, that you were like, oh, this is what I'm going for? After you realized that validation wasn't it, what was the next chapter where you started to feel feel that void of like, okay, this is the
I'm excited to hear this.
I mean, I think it still took more time. Like I learned that lesson like later. It didn't click right away, because even after that, it was still like, okay, what's the next thing? Like, okay, I've accomplished this. I did in the 200. Okay, we're moving events. Like how can I do this in a bigger way? And so, it was just, let's go to the next Olympics. And people would ask like, well, are you done now? Like you've done the thing. And I'm like, I'm an athlete. Like this is like, I don't think anyone is asking like, LeBron, like, are you done now? Like you've got 1, 2, 3, like you just keep going. That's who you are. And so I think that was it. I kept going. But then there was like a turning point where it was like, it can be more than just the medals. Like it's more than just, I was put here for more than just the reason to run fast. Absolutely. And I think that was the part when really we started working together, was like, okay, wow, we can have an impact that reaches beyond the track. And that's when it was like, okay, this is actually fulfilling to me. More so than just the accomplishments.
And how did you take that athlete mindset? Because you're saying, people aren't asking LeBron, like, are you done now? Right? You're an athlete. You're always going to keep going. And you're process oriented. You want to do the work. So how does that now show up in your work together as entrepreneurs? How's that athlete mindset fueling your work?
Yeah. I think that's the benefit
Yeah.
is that, we know how to work hard.
Yeah.
That will never phase us. Like, we do the hardest workouts we could imagine, and you take that to the business world, and it's the same thing. Head down, and you keep doing it, and having a love of building. Starting from nothing and just seeing it progress. To me, that's what I really enjoy.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that with what we do now, and there's no shortage of like a challenge. I love a challenge, and so we have a ton of those. And I think having that mindset, having done it before in one space, knowing that like we can be successful in another space and really trusting that.
Yeah, I think there's also like the goals that we were able to set in working together in sport. Like the goal is singular, and it's not be really good. It's to literally be the absolute best quantifiably in the world at something.
Yeah.
And so I think that like, when you take that to entrepreneurship, like it just feels like, how do you lose? Like you're telling me I need to be top 500, like top 500 is amazing. Like top 500 will change generations of our family. Like if I'm one of the 500 best, like, like I think there's something in that process for an athlete where you're broken is the wrong word, but like the focus is, you realize like it's abnormal. It is not, that's not how people see things and view things, and I think the real challenge is how do you build a team of that? Right. And so like, I think that there's how we approach things, but like we're a family business and like there's other people that you're trying to say like, hey, like, wait,
and then you realize you're different. Like,
yes, absolutely.
And
you're
it
like,
wasn't
oh
until,
wait,
like this is what
not
showed
everybody
us
operates like that.
Yeah.
Like
that we were different.
Talking about like
it's beautiful. I think I wanted the trainer in me. So I think it's important that I tell you guys I tried to go to the NFL. It didn't work. Got it. I tried to go to the NFL. I have a long list of family members that have played at the First Cousins and made it, and then I didn't make it. And but what I had was work ethic. I had training. And I didn't want to be a trainer. I'll be 100% honest with you guys. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I just knew that I had been trained my whole life, and I didn't want to train. But now training has opened up every door for me. And we're talking about entrepreneurship, but I want to know like what. I ain't trying to go deep down your training path, but like, what did a training day look like for you, right? Were you out there going balls? Were you out there going? Were you out there pushing it to the limit? Because you inspire a lot of people, not just girls and women. You inspire men, kids, so many individuals. Like, I want to know like what people don't see. You like I'm like that's who I am deep to the core. I love the stuff behind. I want to see are the people really putting in work, because I know a lot of people with God gifted talent that don't do the work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm and it's okay if you don't like to do the work, but it sounds like you guys love the work. And I'm curious as like, what was your every day you woke up when you weren't competing at on TV or for something? What did that look like? Was that desire? It always had to be on, but you have a natural ability too. And, you got to continue to carve at that. What did that look like? You know what I mean? And who did you have around you as well to continue to push you? Was it your brother? Was it your friends? Like, what was that environment like?
Yeah. I think my coach is the one who really put everything together, Bobby Kersey. And we, had a I think the interesting thing about track and field is like, the majority of it is training. Like it's a sport where you don't compete as much. You don't perform as much. And so you just have to really enjoy training. So it would be, about 5-6 days a week.
Okay.
We start off on the track, and we would be there, maybe 2-3 hours. And you're doing, depending on the time of year, conditioning, reps, drills, over distance training, speed work, all those sorts of things. Take a break, and then you're in the gym for a couple of hours, and that would be your day. And then you do your recovery work and all of that. But I love to train. I think that's the thing that I miss most of all right now is like having that structure. Like you get up, and you go out and you put the work in. And I love seeing the process of, starting where you start off and then where you finish.
Yep.
And yeah, we had an amazing team, starting with my coach and like therapists, training partners. I think really just that environment that we had training just really elevated things and made you want to go harder. And we started, with whatever the big goal was, the Olympics, World Championships, work backwards from that. And just get after it. The thing about Bobby, he would never tell us what the workout is. So you never know ahead of time. We would always try to figure it out. He'd put these cones on the track and, we'd try to guess what it is, but he would never say. And so I'm a sprinter. I like short distances. That's me. So any workout where, you cross where you started, I don't care for that.
Yeah.
So, 600s, 300s, he would just have this way of, you just keep going.
Yeah.
You start off with a 6 and then it's a 4 and then a 2. And when you cross the line, he'll tell you just walk 100 meters.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're walking to. So you're like, okay, well, this could be a 6. This could be a 4. You're trying to play, but he was making you mentally tough. Whatever he threw at you,
yeah.
you would have to do. And for me, I felt like if you would have told me that, beforehand, this is the workout, there's no way I would have thought I could do that.
Yeah.
But because you pushed me in the way that you did, and he always just had this vision of what you could do, and I just trusted him 100%. It was like, okay, if you tell me to do it, I'm going to attempt it. And so those were the days that got me where it was just like never ending, just tempo around the track. And then you would end with something that was just an all out, 200 or something. And you just, whatever you had left. And
And then he would like break it down where he would say, he knew obviously what the workout was, but you guys were doing about 2 miles, right? Like about 3,000, somewhere between 3,000 and 3,000 meters of work. So 2 miles of sprinting over the course of 2 or 3 hours, right? And so many people with running, because they've never trained for it like that, and at the high school level, even at the college level, like you don't understand all the details. The training isn't really broken down and explained that way. And so, to think of 2 miles of sprinting, and that's hard.
Yeah.
That's unbelievably hard. But then you've got to come back and do it again the next day.
Yeah.
So it's not like you just do it once for the week. Like it's the coming back. To me, that's the thing that I always get blown away with your career is it's one thing to show up and put in the work and do it for the year. And then maybe for an Olympic cycle, like a 4-year period, but to go every day. You went pro at 17 and you retired at 37.
20 years.
So 20 years of 5 to 6 days a week, over and over and over and over.
Bobby was making you mentally sharp.
Yeah.
The physical was, like everything you touched on is how I love to approach a human being. Just train the mind and the body of follow is really what is on that wall.
Yes.
And Bobby really represents that. And you stood up to that challenge every day. And that's where people fail. Everybody wants the answers. And sometimes you don't need the answers. Sometimes you just got to go and you got to show up. And the mental fortitude has to kick in and go, I'm going to get this shit done. And I got to go through. And you said something else, which talks about your entrepreneurship, which I'm ready to jump into, was going through the process, waiting that time for a big day. It wasn't a whole bunch of meets. And so that gives you the process of building a business, right? I would love to talk about this Nike process, like how, so many people know the story, but I don't know how deep they know kind of how all of this happened. You got pregnant, and Nike did what Nike did. And which led you down this path where your brother came in and you guys created your shoe company, which we're excited to share. But I really want to give that again. How did you have that wherewithal to say, no, I'm gonna go do this by myself? Why you have one of the biggest brands and you fought that and you changed history for them. You made them step up to the plate, and so then you were still able to do this. So I would love to understand like that courage.
Yeah, I think a lot of it. So Wes and I were working together at the time. He had a sports agency, and so he represented me. And so I think a lot of it happened together. You know, I think, do I go through that situation by myself? It's not the same outcome at all.
We should tell it together, because I think that it started with me getting an email knowing that we were getting to the end of this contract period. And I think like our approach was like, we weren't pressed. Like we were like, she had just, it was 2017.
Yeah.
She had just taken third at the World Championships, which I have like a whole theory on why you took third. That was actually Nike's fault.
Yeah.
Because it was like 4 weeks before the championship, 3 weeks before the championship.
It doesn't matter though.
Oh, okay. Well,
No, I mean,
It matters to him because he's still passionate about it.
And to her,
And your assistant.
but also to her, she's like, there's no excuse ever.
Yeah, that's
right.
what I'm
Like,
saying. Like,
she's just like, when you line up, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
it's got to be. But I also think that you just laid out Bobby's training philosophy. You work backwards. You have a goal and you work back, and you all build a plan. You don't race a lot. It's like very clear why you race, where you race. You pick your spots. And so then when your sponsor calls 3 weeks before the thing you've been working back from and says, we need you to go run. And we say, no, that's not in the plan. And they say, no, you need to go run. And you go run and you do something outside of the plan. And then you end up taking third. From your perspective, totally hear you. It doesn't matter, but it does matter. Like it absolutely does matter. That's like going to a football player and saying the morning of the game, I'm going to make you go film a commercial where you have to run back and forth 100 times. Like, well, of course that's going to impact the game. You like, it has to. How could it not, you know? So, but anyway, that was besides the point. She had just taken third, but third made you the most decorated world champion in history. You had just broken Bolt's records, I think, for like the most medals or something like that. She just became the most decorated. So we weren't like pressed about it. We thought, you know, you're going into your final Olympics. We know that they're going to pay you less money because it's not just Nike. That's what all of the companies do. They just take advantage of it because you're at the end. And typically that means you're slowing down.
Yeah. She
She wasn't slowing down. So we knew there was going to be a hit. So I get the email. I'm expecting 15% less than what she's making. And then I see 70% less. And that was just like, you know, it was actually something Nike taught me in my experience. And they said, you know, sometimes an agent comes to you making a proposal for an athlete and there's nothing to talk about. Like the athlete's worth $350,000. They come at you and say, hey, it's going to be $1.5 million. Nike's not going to negotiate with them. We're so far off. Like we can just sit here. There's nothing to talk about. Right. And so they taught me that. And I read the email and, you know, the guy said, hey, give me a call after you read the email. And I called him and I was like, this is something you taught me. And I was like, but there's nothing to talk about here. We are so far off. There's no counter to this. So you guys need to talk about it on your side and figure out, is this where you're at? And then I had to go to ALLYSON and share that with her, which was horrible. But
yeah, for me, I think it's more so, you know, it's business, but at the same time, the money was beside the point. To me, it was like the belief. Like it was like, oh, you're done. You know, like we no longer think that you're it. And to me, that was just like, I think there was a point where I was like, I'd kind of rather just do it by myself. Like if you're not with me, like I love when someone tells me I can't do something.
You ready to go?
It's on. Like, let's go. But then, you know, I was at this place in my life where I wanted to start a family and I had put it off for a really long time because I saw the other women in my sport really struggle through that. And I saw close friends of mine, their contracts would either be paused or if they didn't have a contract, it would be really hard for them to get another one because you have a baby, it takes a second to get back. And I just saw that struggle. So I was like, well, if I do everything first, you know, if I accomplish all of the stuff, then maybe I would be safe. You know, maybe I wouldn't face anything like that. So decided to go forward. And all of this is happening during this time of this renegotiation period. And so that wasn't great timing. And
but I think also it was like, they also already told you by the 70% less, you still weren't safe. Right. Like, and so it was like, didn't even have anything to do. Your process was like, I should be able to like earn my ability
Yeah.
Yeah.
to start a family. And then they said, without any knowledge of anything with the family, like, oh no, you're worth 70% less to us already.
Mhm.
And
It amplified everything too,
yeah,
because it
yeah,
was just like,
yeah,
man, what I already expected, like even before I'm even telling them that, they're telling me that this is what I'm worth.
Right.
So it was a really difficult place to begin that. But I went forward with it. And in my sport, like what a lot of the women do is
So you went forward with the deal.
no.
Okay,
So,
so-
I became pregnant.
Okay.
And so I went forward with like, okay, I'm still gonna, this is what I want at this time in life. I've put it off
Yeah.
long enough. So I'm gonna go down this path. And the women before me who the contracts were paused and all that, a lot of them hid their pregnancies.
Mhm.
They secured new contracts. They didn't know they were pregnant and they went forward. And so I was trying to figure out like what I was going to do on that front. But I kept training, but I hid my pregnancy. So I started to train when it was still dark. I started to do everything. Like I barely left the house. Like we were moving forward because
Damn.
I guess at that time we still didn't have anything on paper.
yeah. So like we went to this place where we said like, hey, you guys need to figure it out. There's nothing, we're not countering, to 50% less. We're just negotiating against ourselves. Like, this is crazy. Like,
Yeah.
no. And anything I'm going to actually counter back to you with, you're going to think is absurd because I'm going to go back to where she should actually be.
Yeah.
So there's just nothing to talk about here. And in that process, I think that's when, when Allison, like rightfully so, and I'm so proud of you that you did, but like decided she was going to move forward with her real life.
Yeah.
Right. And like Nike for us, like that was family. That was, like, and you talked at the beginning about like, what was the dream? Like, I think, to like, Black kids in America who love sports, like Nike's the dream. Like that's where you want to go, And so we didn't have this written offer from them. We had verbal stuff. And as soon as Allison like shared that, like, okay, I'm going to have a family. Like, this is what I'm doing. That changed everything because I knew the second they knew she was pregnant, this deal was going to just magically disappear for no reason.
Yeah.
Right. And so we needed something in writing from them. So, Allison hid her pregnancy. She was training in the dark, baggy clothes, like.
This sounds crazy.
It was like looking back now, I'm like, I really don't know how I got through that.
Yeah, this sounds insane. Like I'm so like.
I mean, and the first thing we
how
did
strong
was
are you?
we went, and it was like maybe 3 or 4 days after you shared with me, and we went and we took 4 or 5 months worth of Instagram photos. And we were like, we've got to have the content because they're going to know that if the content disappears, something's up. And so we went and we changed hairstyles, clothes, we shot 4 or 5 months worth of content so that we could be ready and like go
and
the
I
whole way through.
kept competing for a while too. It was like, okay, I think that I don't know who I thought I was, but kept
This
racing.
sounds crazy.
Kept racing until like I was like, okay, I think, it was a couple months and I was like, okay, I think that we shut it down. But yeah, we just kept kind of plugging away. And then
But you did all this because this was livelihood, right? Like these sponsor deals this was how you make money, right? I think it's important to go down that path versus people don't know. So let them know why. Like because I'm sitting over here like I don't. This is mind blowing to me. Like the fact that you had to go through so much because obviously it was a deal, but these deals are intricate for a track athlete. To your point earlier, you came home, you want to go medals, and you're like, we all know life's still the same.
Yeah,
I want to know a little bit like what is that? Like what does a deal look like, and why this was so disrespectful? And obviously that you learn through so much of all this stuff, and I hope there's no bad blood because we learn and get better.
Yeah.
But I think it's important for people to kind of hear like why this was so important, like to your deals. Like I'm sure, I don't know how many you had on the table, but I'm very curious as to why this was important, why you know what I mean? And without talking about money, I think people just need to truly understand. And then we'll talk about the pivot and how you guys have shifted.
Yeah. I think there's a big disparity in track and field as far as what you're earning. I think, I was very blessed to be at the very top of, for just contracts in general, like at that time period. And I knew I wanted to come back to run and come back to the sport. And, I figured this was going to be my last contract. I knew that, I was at the end of my career. But I knew that I should have like that one more contract. And so, for me, it was really not about the money at all.
Yeah.
To me, it was the principle of it.
Yeah.
It was like it was them saying that they did not believe in me. And I think that's what really fired me up.
And I think that's what you heard was that they didn't believe in you.
Yeah.
And I think that like, that's how you heard it and took it, which I think it's worse than that. I think they did believe in you.
Yeah.
I think they had no doubt.
Value.
I think they felt like
they could get it.
They could get away with it.
Bully's bully.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Like, to me, not believing in you, like, I love that you took it that way because it fueled you. To me, it was worse than that. Yes. They knew you were still going to be great. They knew that. Mm. Their thing was, you have been so deeply branded. And and I think it's interesting, that word branded, like brand, right? Like it literally is like, it comes from cattle, right? And like their thing was, you have been so deep, like we took this hot piece of iron and we put that swoosh on you. Mm-hmm. And we think nobody else is going to pay you what you're worth because you're marked by us. Mm-hmm. Right. So
man,
we won't pay you what you're worth.
Time stamp that. That is a bar in itself, because never even, I'm from Texas. I know what a brand on a cow looks like. You know what I mean? You saying that's mine, and if you come steal my cattle, I know what my brand. That is, I never even, that's a bar. And I know it sounds so simple, but that's so true.
And I think like that's why I feel it's much worse than them not believing in you. They believed in you. They knew, because they had never seen anything like you ever before in the history of the sport.
Yeah.
And I think when you even say like, you were so blessed to be at the highest point of the contract, I think that like, you were so blessed that God gave you the ability he gave you and the work ethic that he gave you, but you earned your contract.
Yeah.
You came into the sport making $160,000 and you got up into 7 figures of deals. But the way that she did that was those 20 medals you saw, you get a bonus for each of those medals. So she earned over the course of 15 years, a medal at a time, another bonus, another bonus, another bonus. And it was just, my salary increased by $100,000 because I won an Olympic medal. Now I won the world championships. I get another $100,000. Oh, and then I won the world championships again. I get another $100,000 for 20 years.
Yeah. And
then you get to this point and you earned it. And then they say to you, nah, we're just going to take it all back. Yeah. We're just going to go back. It wasn't like, some of the other athletes I worked with, they come into the game way up here. Yeah. Right? Like, it's not that. It's like going to Jordan and saying like, that somebody gave him something.
Yeah.
Like, no, he came into the league with no money. Like, he built that house. And then the new people walk into it and they're like, oh, it's nice in here. I like this. And as they should. Like, that's what it should be. But I think that what Nike was doing, it was business. Yeah. And I can respect that because I understand business. Yep. But I also think that, Phil Knight in his book, Shoe Dog, towards the end of it, he says this thing that I will never, ever forget. And he says, if it's ever just business, then business is very bad. And I have like an email from Nike saying it's just business. Yeah. And to me, like, that was the problem. It was just business. Yeah. And they knew they could get away with it. And they were right.
Yeah.
Like, they absolutely could, because no one else was going to pay her what she was worth because she was branded Nike. And I also understand their point. Yeah. if it's me, am I going to go take her and say, yep, we'll pay you millions of dollars. Now we need to go pay 50 times that to get people to believe that you're one of our athletes, not one of their athletes. And then she's going to go on the biggest stage, and Nike already owns the uniforms. So then when she gets in her biggest moment, she can wear your shoes, but every time she crosses the line, it's the swoosh again.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, like, from a business perspective, yeah, I get it. Makes sense. You know, like, I think what they underestimated was that they underestimated that we went to school in the Valley, but they forgot we were from South Central.
Yes.
Like, they didn't know that part. They didn't see that part.
Yeah. I first of all, I'm so proud of, like, this moment. Not like, sometimes people say proud in the wrong way, but, like, this is, like, groundbreaking, obviously, and just the wherewithal. And I think that a lot of times they do that because they think we don't know.
Yeah.
And they know that most aren't doing enough research. Most are just saying, I'm going to take what they giving me. I'm just excited to be signed. We were with Nike. And that's another story off camera. I'm fortunate enough to be with Fabletics now, my brother Kevin, and we're partners at that company. But, you know, then I feel like they tried to fix it, right? And maybe I'm wrong. And so can you talk about that? And then I would love to tap into the entrepreneurial side of kind of what you've been able to build. And but you taking that step helped a lot of people.
Yeah.
So it really didn't fall too dark, right? It's as hard as it was for you. You opened up an opportunity for all the other women coming through the sport of any, I think, that are signed, that want to start a family, that don't have to go through. There'll still be some things, but now forward facing, you've now said, and I think from what I remember, there was this massive voice that started to ring out, like, they did bad by you, we got to fix it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you said, oh, I'm cool. I'm gonna go do my own thing. But I think within that, you did so much for so many. And I think it's going to be a part of your legacy outside of all the things that you have that are decorated for your sport, your craft. You created a legacy that now is empowering, that you can live your life, still be a decorated athlete, and not lose value.
Yeah.
And because that's what it was. It was they said you're less of value.
Yeah.
And that pissed me off, even just hearing you talk about it. Because all too often we build the value. We do everything you need. You get all your money in return times 100. And then you decide that you say, oh, yeah, we don't want that. That would piss me off too.
Yeah.
And then I have this, I'm going to prove you right. I'm going to prove you wrong and prove myself right, that I'm still her. And so I'm excited. I'm man. Shit.
Could you also just talk a little bit about a lot of the grant work that you did surrounding this as well? Because I know there's partnerships. Well, talk about the story thereafter. We know the partnerships that came out afterwards, but you did a lot to support other women in this space. So
I think, like, rolling into it, start with the, like, what actually happened in the contract that led to it.
So I got to a place where the money was the money. It was disrespectful is what it was. Okay, cool. I can handle that. And so I turned my attention to what we call maternal protections. And basically that is what we were asking for them to put in the contract, was language that would protect you after you have a baby. So a way the track and field contracts work is they're performance-based. So you go to the World Championships, you go to the Olympics, you get a bonus. But if you don't go, you get a reduction. Now, if you have a baby during that time, if you're pregnant, you just give birth, there's nothing in place to protect you. So essentially, you have a baby and you're going to be reduced. And what was happening to women is they would be reduced and reduced until they were pushed out of the sport and they couldn't make any money. And so we simply asked that they put the language in the contract to protect for a certain amount of time so that you could have the space to get back to where you were. Now, they told me that I could have that. And so we're like, great, that's what we asked for. Cool. Wow. We can move forward on that point. But we got the contract back and that language was not in the contract. And so basically they were telling me specifically that I could have it, but they weren't willing to set the precedent for all female athletes.
Wow.
And that was the point where it was like, okay, do I take this for me, or do we say, like, we're holding out for everybody? And through the course of this, I had my daughter. and I had a really hard pregnancy. I had a really hard birth, and she spent a month in the NICU. And I remember, kind of going back and forth on this topic. And I was actually sitting in her nursery, like looking at her in the fight that she had just been through. And it was like, there's no way that I don't stand up for everybody, because I have a daughter, and like this is going to be her and her generation. And so we decided to not do that, to say that that's not going to be acceptable, and to write this New York Times op-ed. And for me, like, I am like a rule follower. Like, I don't like to shake the boat, like anything. So the thought of like writing a New York Times op-ed about like what really went down was like terrifying. And I remember like talking to Wes about it, and just like, is this the move? Like, I'm not sure. And he was really just like letting me like make the decision, and not like, I always look for him for like, okay, like what are we doing? Yeah. But he was really putting it on me. And during that time, he told me, like, you can use your voice even if it shakes. And that just resonated with me, because it was like, I'm scared, I'm terrified, but I don't have to be paralyzed by that. I can still go forward. And so that's what we did. We decided to write this New York Times op-ed. We talked about the whole thing. And that's where the change came. So it was, I think, 2.5 weeks later.
3 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, after we wrote the op-ed, that Nike changed their policy. They said that they would offer 18 months of protection for women. I had already left. So it's, it's one of those things where the change is not going to be about you. Like, you're not going to be the one to benefit. But that thought, like, my daughter, and even like, I didn't realize this is going to happen fast. Like, this is now. And I remember going back to the Olympic trials, and one of the young women that I was running against, she just pulled me to the side, and she was like, thank you. Like, in real time, I was like, this is crazy. Like, people are going to benefit from this now. Like, I'm competing against you, and you're, benefiting. But to me, that was like the shift, where it was like, wow, this is real impact. Like, this is bigger than getting a gold medal. Like, this is changing the culture. And to me, like, that was the moment where I was like, okay, I think like this is what it's all about.
Honestly, like,
that
truly, that's applause.
Yeah, that is absolutely incredible. I think just you goated yourself. No, literally, you goated yourself. And it talks about, you said your purpose was bigger, more than just running fast.
Yeah.
And then you found it, another discovery. You discovered something, and then you guys discovered this shoe company.
Yeah.
And your brother was like so amazing at like how you guys thought about that. Can you give us a little insight at kind of what that process has been like? What's the mission, and how are you guys going to continue to lead forward, and some of the things that you guys are looking to do, and how can we help? How can we be a valuable resource? Like, let's talk about it. Let's also continue to inspire. But I'm very interested. The shoes look amazing. I'm disappointed that I didn't get a pair that you didn't think to say, hey, send them a size 12.
They don't have men's shoes. Wes is the only one with men's shoes on.
No, we got you. What size are you?
12. Yeah. So,
getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But basically after we blew everything up, it was like, okay, what is our next step? And I had been very heavily Nike branded, and we went to all the major shoe companies, and there was no interest. And for me, like, it was this devastating moment where it was like, man, I've worked so hard to get to this point. Like, it's crazy that I'm still training for the Olympics and nobody wants to sponsor me. Like, it was just kind of this crushing moment. And, I'm talking to Wes, and I'm just like, I feel defeated. Like, I'm begging these companies to see my worth and value, and there's like no response. And that's when he was like, yeah, like, I think we should do this ourselves. And I'm like how, like, build a company. And it just, to me, like, we didn't grow up like seeing people do that. Yeah. And so it felt very out of reach to me. It felt super ambitious. Wes is definitely like the visionary one out of the two of us. But I was like, at first I was like, no, that's not, that's not for us. But I like sat with it for a while, and it was like, no, like, you're right. Like, what you're saying is that we can be the change makers. Like, we don't have to ask someone else to do this. Like, we can actually do this. And And then it was like, well, how do we do this?
Yeah, I think there was like there were things that we kind of got to see, because these companies pulled us so deeply in, right? And I think at the beginning we thought they were pulling us in as family.
Yeah.
And I think like there were
some people that
yeah,
may have thought you
I mean,
were
and I
family,
would say
but
like yeah,
they got a job to do too. And so
that's why they're there, and that's
Yeah.
fair. Like
Yeah.
that's all good, and and I think that taught us something.
I won't say it's fair. They have to work within their scope
with what it
to
is.
protect it is. It's not fair.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let that slide.
Yeah.
It's not fair. Because when you bring value,
Right,
and you are when you are the value,
there needs to be
there
that
need-
exchange. Yeah. And I think that like what we saw like in being inside of it so deeply was these are just people, right? Like these are just people who are doing things. Some of them seem really smart. Some of them don't seem that smart at all. Some of them work really hard. Some of them are some of the laziest people I've ever seen. They were just people.
Yeah.
And so like with that, we got to sit with like the people that most people don't ever get to meet. And then like the result was they're just regular people.
Yeah.
Like they're just, and they may be smarter than you in a certain area or maybe not,
Yeah.
And so I think it created this belief that like, well, we've seen them do it. And for me, I had led brand partnerships at a footwear startup, this company called Allbirds. And at Allbirds, I got to like really see what startup footwear looked like. And so it wasn't that we were sitting there saying like, well, if Phil Knight can do it, we can do it too. It was more, I was thinking like, oh, if Joey and Tim can do it, we can do it too, and I was able to see it on like a small scale and see a small team and like how quickly they were able to get funding and how it really like took hold and like took, certain communities by storm. And that's what really like gave me the confidence to say to Allison, like, what if we did it on our own? But even when I said it, it was more, when Allison gets frustrated, for me, it's an uncomfortable. I don't like it. I was the kid who would try to take her spankings. Like I didn't like seeing her sad, and so when I'm listening to her and seeing this way that she was thrown away, not just by Nike, but by like the whole community, and I was the one going and knocking on those doors and saying, hey, do you have any interest in this unbelievable athlete? And it was, we're really focused on going younger. She's amazing. She's her, but like, maybe we could do like maybe 100,000. And at the same time, I'm negotiating deals for 18, 19-year-olds coming out of college for, millions of dollars. And I'm like, sorry, what? Like, why in the world would Allison take $125,000 from you? And in the same breath, I'm having this conversation about this person who has done nothing, like who literally has potential. And you think that they're worth 20 times more? Like that is absurd. So for me, there was a frustration. It wasn't even with Nike at that point. It was with the rest of it, and was just like, this is crazy. But I was just trying to say like, no, don't cry. We can figure it out. Don't be upset.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so what if we built our own? And I think that then the way Allison processes isn't so much in the moment, but when she came back and was like, yeah, I've been thinking about it. At that point, I was like, okay, well, I better figure it out. Like, I better,
this ain't just talking.
I better get it together. Like, what does that actually mean and look like? And, and that started us down this journey that I think was, first, can we make a shoe that she can wear in the Olympics? Like, how do you make a shoe? What goes into it? And we didn't know, like we'd been so close to it, so it's like, that's the part that is always so challenging, but yeah, it was this thing where we felt like, no one was seeing the value. And then we felt like we're going to try to create that value and build it. And so it started with just, can we build a shoe for her to wear in the Olympics? And what does that mean? We, loved shoes and had been around them so much, but didn't know anything about making them, and certainly didn't know anything about the business of manufacturing them and selling them. And so then when we first like got the first hurdle, which was connect with a developer, and then the developer explained to us what they do. And they said, but you're going to need a designer. And we were like, okay, well, where do we find that? And where we were so fortunate was there were a lot of women who were so talented who had worked at the buildings we spent most of our time in, who heard the story, had their own experiences of feeling thrown away by these companies, and not just Nike, Adidas, like that when we reached out, they were so willing because they had spent their whole careers there as an afterthought.
Yeah.
And what they told us was, yeah, what you're doing is great. That's awesome. But you don't know what the real issue is here. And I'll never forget the conversation with Tiffany, our developer. And she said, like, the real issue is shoes aren't being made for women. And I was like, I know, it's so horrible. It's crazy. And that's normally how most people respond when I say it. It's this real quick. There's no pause there. It's a real quick, like, I know it's so bad. It's like everything, right? And she goes, no, I don't think you're really getting it. And I was like, no, I know, like, pink it, shrink it, like, I got it. And she was like, I still don't think you're getting it. And at that point, I'm like, okay, well, you said they're not made for women. I said they're not made for women. It sounds like we are agreeing. Explain it then to me. Like, what am I missing? And she was like, well, you have to go back to the beginning of how a shoe's made. And she's like, and it starts with the last. And she's like, and the last is just a mold. It's just a plastic foot. And that last, the pattern gets wrapped around it that takes the shape of the shoe. But like, that's the foundation of it all, is the last, this plastic mold of a foot. And I was like, okay, like, kind of getting more familiar, like, all right. And she goes, and that plastic foot is a man's foot, not a woman's foot. And I was like, okay. And it hits, right? And I was like, all right, well, then when I go into Foot Locker and there's the men's side and the women's side, what's the women's side? And she was like, that's marketing. And I was like, yeah, no, that's not marketing. Like, that's lying. Marketing is put this shoe on, you'll run fast like Allison. That's marketing, right? Marketing is like vanity sizing. It's my pants are a size 00. There's no woman who's sitting there thinking the actual measurement of her waist is 00. Like, that's marketing. But saying something is, it would be like all of us as people of color, like saying that's made for your hair type. And it's not. That's not marketing. Like, that's lying. Yeah. That's just pure, that's not true. Like, you're telling me that I should buy something based on something that is untrue. Yeah. Right. And I think that, like, that's when we had the conversation and we realized that Saish wasn't about Allison. Saish was about women being an afterthought. And so we then set out to actually build a footwear company and it was a footwear company for women. Nice. Because right now,
so I shouldn't ask what pair of shoes I got. That's my bad.
We love it.
Yeah.
Because I always say, like, I've been wearing men's shoes all my life.
Yeah. So I'm looking at Wes over here with some shoes. I'm like, all right. Yeah.
No, everyone who wants to support down, but we will make our shoes for women.
For women, and also, like, it's it goes down. It's like the body, like the human, like a woman's foot is different than a man's. It's not just, even though feet look like feet, like a woman's foot is different. The structure of it, right? Like, it's the forefoot area, it's wider than a man's. And that's because she has hips and she has a chest and she uses that part of her foot for balance. And so it has to be wider because her body's different, right? Like, her heel is more narrow than men's because that's where weight goes. And she doesn't weigh as much as a man. So she doesn't need a thick heel like men do. And, and I think that to build shoes for women like they are small men, like, that's what's happening, is they're just building shoes for women and they're just saying, oh, you're a small man. But like, you take a woman's clothing, there's nothing on her body that she wears that is not made for her body, except for her shoes. And she wouldn't wear shoes not made for her body if the biggest brands in the world weren't lying to her about that, right? And so the way I like always love to try to drive it home is like, Allison's a size 9, I'm a size 10. And I would ask, like, what's the unit of measurement on those sizes? Like, it's a length. Like, what is the length of my 10 and her 9? And it immediately becomes difficult to figure out because there's a women's one and a men's one, but there is no gender assigned to measurement. There's not a male inch and a female inch. And the length of the foot, it's an inch, it's inches. So mine is 10 inches. Hers is not 9 inches.
Right.
It's a made up number. It's not a ratio. It's just a made up number to make her think that shoe is made for her. And it's not. We go to Europe, the length is 39. You're 39? The length is 39. If my foot were the same length as hers,
You'll be
my size would be 39.
Yeah.
Like, it's a measurement, right?
Wow.
Like, but here, it's marketing, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just lying. It's just convincing. And women don't realize that. And that's where we see the huge opportunity just as entrepreneurs is we think that as this tipping point comes, this is not going to be one that women like go quietly on. It's not a slow, it's once this is really clearly out there and women really understand what's happening. Yes, the product is more comfortable. The performance will be better. It reduces injury, like all of the things there. Yes. And also, you've been giving your hard-earned money to companies that are just lying to you. They're just telling you this is for you when it's not.
What's the mission right now, right? What's the mission statement? And I'm really interested because you're going to see a lot. This is really a LinkedIn thing, right? This is going to put some stuff out there. But like when we're telling people or when I'm sharing this story or when people hear this, what is it outside of like, what is the mission? Like for me, I want to understand like the mindset behind you, your brother. Like I hear it, but can you put it into, you guys are really intelligent, super smart people. But can you put it to me in a way that other people would resonate with it from a place of like aspirational, inspirational? It's all of it's there. But like when I think about this, if I had one paragraph I had to read and I didn't get a chance to see all of this, what would you say?
Yeah, I think, I'll start it off and it's always going to be most important and most impactful coming from you, but it's that women deserve better than what they're getting in our society right now. And sure, that's about shoes, but it's not about shoes. This company is so much bigger than, than being about footwear. I think Allison spoke about it earlier. It's about, we want the brand to be a symbol to women. And, women deserve to not be afterthoughts.
Yeah.
They deserve to not be treated like small men. They deserve for their needs to actually be considered. And I think of even in our process of when we were raising money for this company, hearing male investors say, well, how different really is a man's foot and a woman's foot? And to me, it's like, it doesn't matter. It's different. It could be 0.5% different, 1% different, 10% different, 100% different. Like a woman deserves that it be made for her. Or let's switch it. Let's make them women's shoes. And then, sir, are you good with it being your foot's 0.5% different? Are you down to just wear women's shoes and let it be 0.5% different? So I think it really comes back to just women deserve better than what they're getting in this society right now. And I want you to hammer it home. But I think that, the other thing that we've seen is that since we introduced this in 2021, to see the brands that have followed, Lululemon introduced women's specific shoes in 22. Under Armour did a women's specific model. Adidas did a couple of women's specific basketball models. On this year just introduced a women's specific running model. We've seen new startups come into the space, probably about like 3 or 4 startups enter the space making women's specific product. So, what it told me was that the mission is so critical of women deserving better because these brands, they all knew. This wasn't like, whoa, mind blowing. Oh, Allison and Wes just built this thing. Like, what is it? What's it called? Like Nike made women specific shoes in the 80s. They chose profit instead. Because in order to make women specific, if you're a big brand like that, you're building two complete different things. And it's just money. That's it,
And women aren't asking for it. They don't know.
Yeah.
So to me, it's my story is the foundation, the core of it all. I don't want anybody else to ever have that feeling of the being discarded, of the feeling like you're not valued, like you're worthless. And that will be at the core of what we always do, that women do deserve better. and they deserve to be at the forefront and to have something specifically for them. The footwear, yes, but also just the symbol, the idea
For sure.
that that we're going to do it differently.
For sure.
I feel like your story really touches on something that my mom has said for a long time, which is that women, especially Black women, their value tends to diminish the older that they get. And that if you don't have financial freedom, if you don't have access, if you don't have plans, if you can't own something, then you're stuck with just taking less. And I believe that so much of what you'll be able to do is inspire women to think through, you might think you're valued this, but what is someone willing to pay you? And what do you own in the meantime, so that you can start to really shift that conversation?
Yeah. And I felt like I felt that more than anything leaving the sport, and retirement has been difficult and hard. And even though you have the thing, that you're doing and that you're passionate about, but really taking ownership of that and understanding, for other athletes that you have to have these things in place. It's such a difficult thing, like emotionally, mentally, moving into this different space. But it is like your value you feel like it's changing so much, and you don't realize like what you really have and what you really are worth, and really stepping into that.
Yeah, I think, which brings me to my thought of why we do Meet the Athlete. It's the deeper layer of kind of the way you're thinking, the way your brother's thinking about business, and some of the hurdles that you've now had to learn and get over, using that sports background, which is the resilience, which takes companies to the next level. And you've already shown, right, some of the brands that you've named are following, right? You may not have the same marketing dollars, but you have the same impact, right, if not greater. Meet the Athlete for us is about the next chapter. What are you looking to do now, right? Here's your company. How do we continue to help support that? But how do we go look at 10 founders that we can go help, right? So what I would like to do from this conversation is say, who else can we lend our hand to? Can we go to dinner, look at 10 companies and see if we can either advise or invest? And that's really why we want to take it a bit further than just a conversation. We want to actually act. We want to show, because all too often we hear these conversations of people that we're going to do this, and then they don't do it. They allocate that money somewhere else. They don't do what they're supposed to do. And so for me, Kim and team, I'm a managing partner of a venture, which is, again, I was the football guy, and now, people see me as a trainer, but being a part of a company called C4, which I had Kev Gamble on, and we 9X, then Keurig Dr. Pepper acquired 30% of the company, almost at $1 billion, and I've been fortunate to be with that company 9.5 years, shifting the tide of having equity, shares, investing. And so how do we start to do that in a more major way? And there's other companies, Pathwater, you won't see me go anywhere without it. I'm an advisor, an investor there. They're about the investor versus just taking the dollar. How do I start to make the change and saying, I want to be at the cap table too. I want to be able to say, hey, I'm driving this forward with my expertise and thought process of mental resilience or creative strategy, more than just being the guy that, I'm one of the top fitness people, I'll say it. But at the same time, man, I bring a lot of value. And that's what I show with C4. Right. And I want to continue to show that. I want the same thing with Fabletics. I want to be a thought partner. And how can you guys come in with us and you guys lead, and we continue to be thought partners in another project together? And that's really why we're doing this, right? It's like, how do we start to go help Black, brown, white, whatever that looks like, but has a mission forward, you know what I mean, in making impact. And for me, that's really where the line in the sand started to grow. I want to continue to grow. I don't know a lot of things. I'm not trying to be the smartest in the room. I'm just trying. I'm trying. I'm gonna just keep shooting my shot. And I've had some success in some things and failed at some others. But I think I love so much about you guys' conversation is it doesn't sound bitter, right? It sounds informative, and it sounds like you want to help and inform. There's not, because we all learned, it was all a process. It was what it was, but now you have this opportunity to shift, right? People that continue to, like, I live my life not out of anger. I live my life out of understanding. Hey, that's cool. That's how you do your thing. No problem. That's cool. Like, I don't gotta subscribe to that,
Mhm.
but I understand.
Mhm.
Hey man, Toyota did the same thing to me, guys. To be honest, I sat and I was like, oh man. Now I won't talk bad. It's no negative, but that was a moment where it was like, hey man, I know I'm the value, and things shifted, and so I learned a valuable lesson. And so now, how do we change that tide? How do we start? Because again, we don't get this information.
Right.
Nobody tells us.
Right.
We didn't. That's where
Right.
where we have to have this conversation about. Hey, I am a CEO. I don't know your title of the company, so on and so forth. I would love to know that too, because it's inspiring to so many women and individuals. But what does that look like as we go in and potentially find a company to invest in? And that's what we're really. This is what this is about.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
are
I
you
love
open
that.
to that? Are you open to helping some young founders and giving your time, or are we capable of investing? I would love to, and be able to, how do we shift the Shark Tank to us?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would love to.
Yeah. I mean, easy is just yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we're all about that. And just that learning process, for me, like as an athlete, you're during your career, you've been so focused on just getting it done, hyper focused on that. And I think you need somebody, like for me, it's been Wes, to have that vision. And I'm really grateful that we've been able to be partners in this, because he's always been the one looking out for the business side of things. But if we can help other athletes have that shift while you're still playing, while you're still doing your sport, to start lining those things up and start thinking differently, that's where the power is, because you can't just keep taking the dollars. You have to have the equity, and that's where, the changes.
A lot of times I took the dollars to fund my projects. You know what I mean? While still bringing value to them. I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to keep doing this. So how are you getting up, staying disciplined? Those disciplines are the same in your business to get to that level of success. And whatever that may be for you, everybody's not trying to have a scalable, sellable company. They're just trying to build and do something.
And I think that, like, with that, there's a lot that I think we can all do, that the four of us can do to move it forward, and then I think there's a lot that we would love your help on too. But I think it starts with team.
Yep.
Right. And however you define that, but you're not going to do it by yourself, period. Right. And I think that that's something that you always do such a great job of explaining. And it was actually, we've never shared this publicly, but this Christmas, and she says it wasn't a Christmas present. She just gave it to me at Christmas time. So don't want you guys to think she gives Christmas presents like this. But Allison gave me, what is it called?
I don't know. There's a technical
title
term for it, but I think it's a more recent thing. But when you get an Olympic medal, they give you two now. And so you're able to give the other one to whoever you choose, who's helped you on your path.
So, so she gave me the medal, right? And it was this thing that she didn't make a whole thing of it.
Just here you go.
Yeah. And it was just it was wrapped.
Not a Christmas.
It was not Christmas time, but it was
I don't want no emotion. Don't cry.
Don't cry.
Don't do
It's
nothing.
not
Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
We already take this.
But it was wrapped like a Christmas present. So
I just had a Christmas present.
But I thought it was a Christmas present. And then there's a card, and I read the card, and it's this isn't a Christmas present. I've been wanting to give this to you for a while.
Man.
Love you, or something, and then I was kind of okay. And I open it up, and, and I see that it's in kind of the box that the medals come in, but that's also the box the jewelry comes in. So I was like, well, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
And then I opened it up, and I see what it is. And I think it was this, I just felt so grateful. I feel even more than grateful. I felt seen, because the journey and my role in the journey, my part of it is in the shadows.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that I hear you as you talk about it too. The people view you a certain way based on what your role is. And I think that because of how you and Kev move, right? It's not about how Kev views you. How he views you.
Yeah.
That's not what it's about. For me, it's not about how Allison knows what I bring to the team. That's not it. And people will say isn't it hard? And I'm like, no, it's not hard at all. No, it's not difficult, because we are a team. Yeah. I'm very secure, and I'm not worried about that. The issue is when I share with you what I do with the outside world, and they go, oh, that's so great. Keeping it in the family, which to me, they don't mean anything negative by it. But to me, keeping it in the family is, oh, I could give this money to anybody.
Yeah, I'm giving it.
I'll just toss it to you, but this is a favor to
Yeah.
you. Not, no, I bring value. Like, I earn this and I'm going to do it better than.
Mhm.
And today I can like confidently say there is no one else in the world that can represent Allison as well as I can. Like whoever the most famous, most successful, they cannot do it as well as I can, period. And that's not a maybe. I'm not indifferent. That's not a slight. Like that's they can't.
Yeah.
There's no debate about it to me. And if they'd ever want to debate about it, we could. But I think that
There's
like
no debate.
it's not there.
It's not even there.
That's true. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing. It's just a no, you
Yeah.
know. And I think that like it's hard when the world looks at you like
Mhm.
you're the, you know, you're the favor,
Yeah.
you know, and like, oh, you don't really bring value. But I think like that moment was just the reinforcement from Allison of like, I see you, I see the value. I want you to know like I couldn't do this thing without you.
Mhm.
And it meant so much. So I think that like being able to first identify, like thinking of other athletes, identify like you're really, really great at what you do.
Mhm.
You can shoot the ball better, you can run faster, you can jump higher, hit harder. Like, yep. And like you're out there putting the work in. Amazing. Like, congratulations. You are not doing it by yourself, period.
Yep.
And like, and that support team around you, who are they? Like, be very, very intentional with who those people are. You know, I look at Braun and his team, and for us as kids, even though, you know, Allison and LeBron are the same age, like he set the tone for me to decide that I wanted to like shoot my shot to work with Allison because I saw what he did with his friends.
Mhm.
Right. And again, while the world was like shaming him and saying that this was a horrible idea, I think what I saw was he didn't say, hey, I made it to the league. Now you guys come run my business. That wasn't it. He made them go to school, but he determined what the school was, right? He said like, Mav, you're going to go work at Nike. Rich, you're going to CAA, and told them like, and then once you get through school, then this will be here waiting for you like on graduation. Right. And I saw that and I was like, okay, so that means, yes, I can do it, but also it's not handed. It's not given. Like you've got to work for it. And then you've got to keep on showing up, you know? So I think the first thing would be team and then like vulnerability. And I think that that's really, really hard for athletes to walk in the room and say, I don't know, but I'm capable of understanding.
Mhm.
Like, I think so many athletes, I could have conversations about this for, you know, hours of athletes that I talk to that they have no confidence. They have no self-confidence outside of their sport. They think they're completely worthless when it comes to anything but their sport. And they don't understand what you've so like perfectly hit as this thread of like what an athlete brings over into business.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And, you know, and athletes are not kind of capable in business. Like they are beyond capable. So I think it's being able to step in and say, I don't know how, but I'm going to work just as hard as I work out there on the field of play to learn and to figure it out. And then I think the other thing that we really struggle with, and I don't know if this is like culturally athletes, you know, but like ask for help, you know, and like that help, you know, I was sharing this with Kim earlier that like we're getting ready to go into a fundraise for SAISH this summer. And, you know, we went through our Series A and we're venture backed and, you know, we have like great names and like all of that stuff. That's not who we really want to build with.
Yeah.
Right. And like the people we want to build with, they have capital. They would be very interested in what we're doing. Together, we can make our brand something that is beyond what any of us could ever imagine.
You said something that just sparked so many thoughts and like this togetherness and this teamwork and like knowing your role and still being a star player. Like looking at the Celtics right now, there's people that are stepping up that you like, that's a part of the team.
Yes, yes.
You know what I mean?
And I think like that title part like is so important and powerful for athletes, because I do think that like that's what you lose when you stop competing.
Yeah.
You lose the title, right? Like, and I remember like,
I'm an NBA player. I'm a NFL player. I'm an Olympic. No.
But what happens when it goes away,
Yeah.
right? Like what happens when you're not that anymore? You know, and I've watched how hard it's been for ALLYSON over the last 2 years. And like, you know, we should find another time to talk about that at some point. But like, because I think it's just, I'm so proud of you in that journey, but I also see how hard it is. But also I remember when I stopped competing and what I felt and saw, it took 2-3 years to start to like find myself, kinda, just where I could start then the 10-year journey of actually finding myself. But it was for my whole life, I was interesting to people because of my title.
Yeah.
Because I was a high school All-American or college All-American and team captain or professional athlete sponsored by Nike. Like that was always, you walked in the room, you didn't have to say anything. Oh, this is my friend Wes.
Yeah.
He's a professional athlete sponsored by Nike. Ooh, oh, so what does that mean? Tell me about, like, people are interested. But then as soon as you drop that and it's just, hey, this is my friend Wes.
Yep. Yep.
And now I'm like, well, wait, but who am I? Like, you're not interested in me. And then you find yourself trying to make someone interested in becoming what you think they want you to be. And I think that like that confidence in who you are, it's the journey that all of us are on, will be on, you know, but I think that it's also like, how do we in community like go on that journey, right? And you to be able to say, hey, I'm going to stop this for 1 second. I just need to tell you something. Like, we don't do that enough.
Yeah.
Right. Like we just let it go. And we were like, I remember when I went through that. And then maybe we'll shoot a text and be like, hey, bro, like if you ever want to talk about it, let me know. Well, now I've got to get the courage up again to be like, hey, I'm having a tough time.
Yeah.
Can we talk about it? But when you just stop and just say here, then all of a sudden that exchange. And I think that's what all of it comes back to is team. It's team.
And you need a Bobby.
Yes.
You need I don't know Bobby, but like you need a mental savage.
Yeah.
You need a person that's gonna be like, nah, I need to talk to me, dog. Like what? Like you need mental savages. Like people hate it.
You have to have it.
Because you're not going to do it yourself.
You can't.
There's no way.
You gotta have mental savages around you.
Someone
that
who
are
can
like,
see that
I ain't telling you shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on.
What was amazing for me was later.
You need that. I know it sounds straight, but
you have to have it.
That's how you fucking go through it. You have to have it. No, tell me that. What you say?
Well, I was going to say what was amazing for me.
No, I'm saying,
yes.
I want to know that, but I also want to know that. But you going through something right now? Tell me, dog. And it's going to be hard, but what I may say back.
Totally.
But I need you to get it out.
But also just think of how much trouble we would keep ourselves out of, especially as men. If your boy saw something that was a little bit, and he noticed it, if he just would have called you on it. Then you went and you made a decision that threw a whole lot off track.
1,000.
And then you're fighting to get back on track. And it was right there. Right. And it was just like, no, I didn't want to come at you like that. You know, I kind of noticed. And it was like, no, I need you to love me. And loving me is telling me the hard thing. Like,
I need
that.
Men and women. I don't give. Listen, I don't get. If you bullshitting, Rob will tell you, I'm on your ass. Especially when it comes down to pushing through weakness. Oh no, I'm not. I started to apologize for being such a like very. My wife hates it. But it was like my brother started. I was getting weaker because I was conforming to like, you need to be a softer. It's too. And then my brother was like, hey. My oldest brother, my mom died, and he stepped in and he was like, hey, I don't like this boss. I don't like this very passive, let it ride boss. Like that's not who you are. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, you're getting soft. And then I'm like, yeah, but they don't, these people, they don't, this is too. And he's like, how you think you got everything you wanted? I'll say this and I'm going to shut up. I'm done. We're going to, swear to God, I go to Russell Westbrook is a great friend of mine, brother. We're at double date dinner and we're sitting here talking about business. This is just our relationship. Russ is an incredible, smart guy. And I'm sitting there and I'm battling. He invested in a company that's how I met her. And actually, he's the reason why the company came to LA.
Mhm.
And I'm sitting here and I'm like, man, I'm just struggling. I'm dealing with these people. And he's like, man, I'm dealing with like these, I'm soft. He goes, how did you build everything you got? And I go, savage, not taking, being straightforward, telling the truth. And he goes, you need to get back to that. You need to get back to that. And then the double slap in the face was he was eating like this super, I'm just going to keep it a buck. He was eating like super clean.
Mm.
And my wife looks at me, she goes, I remember when you used to be that
Mm.
disciplined.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, bet, okay, got it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I've lost.
Mhm.
I lost it. I needed that. It
Mhm.
hurt because I'm
Mhm.
competitive.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, I'm not a savage no more.
Mhm.
Cool, I can deal with it.
Mhm.
It was hurting that people was like, oh, you a savage. Then my wife said, oh, I remember when you were that disciplined. I'm like, oh, okay. That's just what I needed to hear. So
Mhm.
those moments of
Mhm.
people and individuals, even when it comes from the people you love to the point,
Mhm.
I love it. It hurts. I'll
Yeah.
debate sometimes because I don't like to hear the
Yeah.
truth,
Yeah.
Mhm.
but we have to have it.
We have to have
So,
it. And we've
Yeah.
got to know we're safe with those people.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but
Allison, me and your brother
Take-
kind of went on
take
a
us
whole.
home.
Yeah.
Take us home.
This conversation, as usual, incredible. We're going to have so many nuggets from this. In the attempt to figure out who we want to attract in terms of early stage companies that we might be able to advise or invest in, give us a sense for what keeps you up at night, who you think you'd be most valuable for. I have an idea. I have a thought in my head, but I want to see if I'm right. Give us a sense for who would be a good partner in this Meet the Athlete endeavor.
Yeah, I mean, I love founders. I think that's where the magic is. I think the issues that we look to solve are around women-centered things. Whatever makes the world better for women. I think it can be broad: women's health, consumer. But to me, the magic is the people. And obviously, we have a passion for underserved founders and founders who don't usually get the funding. We know how hard it is to raise, and so. I think when you meet that person and there's something special about them. I mean, we've talked about the work ethic and all, when someone has that factor. So to me, that's always what's most interesting is the people.
Yeah. And I think that is what will always lead it, will be that. Our fund, Crenshaw Ventures, is Crenshaw for our neighborhood. And, it's how do we give women, female founders, and not exclusively, but that's where our focus is, the opportunity to build the things that they want to build, right? And I think that as we started learning a little bit more about investing, that question of what's your thesis was always there. And it's an innocent question with a lot behind it. And I think that, sometimes the people you're raising money from, they're really trying to figure out, again, as they should, how do they get their return, right? And I think that there are certain things and reasons why, founders of color or underserved founders don't necessarily get the same funding. Like the things that make sense to us that we've been exposed to, it's consumer. It's not tech. That's not where most of us have like lived our lives and not been sitting around in the tech environment. So, we're not building tech companies. We're building consumer businesses with real tangible products. And to the venture world, that's not what is interesting, right? And I think that, again, people of color are overlooked, period, right? But like, we really looked at people of color in just a city like LA, a really privileged city, like comparatively to other places. How many brown people are on computers, like even have computers, let alone are spending their lives on computers? And forget just from a founder standpoint, but just from like consuming the actual thing the founders are building. And I think there's this huge market for consumer, like a huge brown community consumer environment, and it's not getting funded. And so I think that like consumer is really interesting. And then I think in the tech space, like we really like health tech. And I think that that's something that, again, like brown communities are not being served in that area. And I think they don't necessarily have to be as consumer facing. They can be directed, at the hospitals, at healthcare systems. because the consumers are, they're in those systems, and this will serve them. But I think we're at a place right now where, from a health standpoint, like it's critical, right? Like we are at a really dangerous place looking at underserved communities of color from a health perspective. So yeah, our interest is there. And I think that, of course, like we love like wearables and sports and all that stuff is great, but really we're not afraid of consumer, and we want to be the type of investor that's willing to be patient, because, right now investors are working on this like 4 or 5 year timeline. And I think that is just, to me, it's silly, like to think that you're going to be able to do everything you need to do in 4 years. If it's that simple, that it just doesn't really make sense, even though people have made a lot of money thinking that way.
I think we'll find some really unique founders, companies, and opportunities that we can synergistically align on. And I'm excited. This conversation has fueled me for so much more, and just you guys are inspiring, and I think we need to see more of us, continuing to lead this way and taking that risk. And like I said, you goaded yourself. You already did it, but then you were able to stand next to that girl, and like you said, she came up to you and was like, "Thank you." Yeah. And sometime that moment of your brother, it's like sometimes that's all that you need. So I'm very thankful you guys spent the time to come here. This is about sharing the opportunity, and how do we find the next founder, and beyond you as just the Olympic gold medalist as you are. I'm gonna fix that. But no, I'm humble that you guys have taken the time, you and your brother, and I'm excited to see where everything goes and what we're gonna do together.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you for doing this. I think it'll have a huge impact, and excited. Yeah,
this is great.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you.